About 2 centuries after the printing of the first American newspaper in 1690, a new genre within media began to arise. Some would call it the first media war, others sensationalized journalism. Often referred to as one of the most famous newspaper wars of American history, the birth of yellow journalism arose from a single cartoon. The Yellow Kid, created by middle-class artist Richard F. Outcault for the New York World, was a character within the comic strip Hogan's Alley that received much attention from the public. It was initially created for the purpose of not only entertainment, but also social commentary, highlighting aspects of the city during the turn of the century, with topics that revolved around race, class, and consumerist culture. As an area of escape for many readers with the satirical quality and enjoyment it provided, the comic, especially The Yellow Kid, was one that appealed to many. Despite the great success that accompanied The Yellow Kid from Joseph Pulitzer's New York World, the possessor of the valuable asset soon shifted from one man to the next. In 1896, William Randolph Hearst of the New York Morning Journal hired Outcault by offering an immense salary. The sole purpose was to acquire The Yellow Kid. Hearst adopted Pulitzer's sensationalistic style, continuing the very attribute of the comic that managed to attract large readership and interest. The New York World soon commissioned a new cartoonist to create the second Yellow Kid. This marked the beginning of the newspaper wars that would affect the people's rights and entitlement to the truth, and the responsibility of the press as providers of such information. Much like what had been done with The Yellow Kid, the prioritization of capturing the reader's interest over delivering the truth continued to grow, later to be collectively recognized as yellow journalism, a term that was coined around 1895, named after the comic that had begun such sensationalizing. The augmentation of such competition gradually led the publications to value profit more and subsequently ethics less. The American public, waiting to hear news of the events that were going on, depended on the press as a source of information. By choosing to intentionally escalate the seriousness of events, the press set aside their responsibility in reporting the truth with accuracy and objectivity. Either oblivious to the press's extent of dishonesty, or merely indifferent toward the level of accuracy and content, the people, consumers of such news sources, consequentially fell as victims of the eye-catching headlines and illustrations. As stated by media historian Frank Luther Mott, yellow journalism consists of characteristics that include both what the people read and what the people see. He claims that the genre was more complex than merely sensational, as the newspaper's visuals played a large role in gaining public interest. Such distinguishing techniques include conspicuous headlines that exaggerate the importance of news, page designs that flamboyantly call attention to itself, profuse use of illustrations, such as photographs and graphics, even when they hold no form of special necessity or significance. Color, particularly in the design and comics, to attract the eyes of readers. And fabricated news stories and interviews, some of which utilize anonymous sources. Despite the presence of a moral conscience, as humans, it is but inevitable for the audience to fall as victims of the press's construction of drama and excitement, considering the nature of human emotion, often something that cannot be entirely controlled. The press had chosen to utilize the combination of the people's weakness and their right to exercise free speech to their own benefit as a business. While the genre of yellow journalism was developing a presence within the American Journalistic Society during the 1890s, the revolutionary movement in Cuba against Spain was simultaneously intensifying. Pulitzer and Hearst saw this rise in tension between the United States and Spain as an opportunity to further advance the publications in terms of readership and profit with the aid of yellow journalism traits. Each focused largely on the Cuban struggle for independence, magnifying the harshness of Spanish rule over revolutionaries with the application of false yet stirring stories.
The bold headlines and vivid drawings of events enabled both publications to rapidly increase its sales and American support for the war. They would recount atrocious stories about starving women and children, executions, and audacious rebels.
Hearst sent two reporters, Richard Harding Davis and Frederick Remington, claimed to be the highest-paid reporters for Hearst. At one point, Remington reported that there was not much action going on in the area where the team was stationed, to which Hearst famously replied, "You furnish the pictures, and I'll furnish the war." The power of the pen remained as strong as ever, with the press serving as a main stimulus of tension between the United States and Spain. Believing the press's condemnation of Spain, even with a lack of evidence, the mind of the American public was conquered by the stories they were told. Ultimately, the sinking of the USS Maine in the Havana harbor on February 15, 1898, was what finally granted Hearst his wish. Although there was no proof as to whether the Spanish had a role in the cause of the sinking, Hearst proceeded with the big story that passionately placed blame on the Spanish. As a result, the United States' public support for intervention significantly rose, serving as a partial factor in the cause of the nation's joining of the Spanish-American War, one that is often seen as the first press-driven war. Yellow journalism and the events that followed as a result in American history hold such importance even until today because they represent the power and influence that the press held over the public attention and readership to the extent of affecting international events. Indeed, the presence of yellow journalism was not the only force that propelled the United States into war, but it did play a role in the happening of events. Although the United States was able to expand its global reach as a result of the war, in respect to the realm of journalism, the recognition of yellow journalism caused doubts against the publication and the true motives of such media. According to the Media and Ethics Journal of the United States Department of State, the purpose and responsibility of the journalistic community is to deliver truth and facts to inform the people about events going on around the world.
With the power granted by the Constitution through the freedom of speech and the freedom of press,
it is a responsibility that the sector of society bears in order to ensure the people's right in possessing access to trustworthy knowledge. The case of yellow journalism and its peak during the late 19th century underscores the potential that the voice of the pen holds. When serving as a messenger between the events and the public, it is crucial to place ethics over profit.
However, the responsibility does not only lie within the hands of the press. In order to preserve the rights of the people themselves must also carry the duty of remaining aware and avoiding the possibility of becoming easy targets, as the power of the pen can initiate both greatness and confusion upon its audience. As stated by Edward Bulwer-Lytton in the early 19th century, the pen, a fuel to the Spanish-American War, is mightier than the sword, a phrase of timeless importance.